Yeah, so I know this is not going to be a fun subject to talk about, but it really is important to your overall financial plan. So before we dive into answering the question of how much life insurance you need, let's talk about what really is the purpose of life insurance, because once we determine that, then we can figure out how much is appropriate for you. All right, so the simple answer to that is one of the primary reasons to have life insurance is to provide lost income to your beneficiaries in the event of a premature death. So think about it. If someone is counting on you for income and you passed away with no life insurance, it could cause really a major financial burden to them. But once you retire and you have saved throughout your working years for your retirement, then the need for life insurance, hey, that may not be an issue. So what I normally like to do is I like to use term insurance and the term equaling the number of years until your retirement. So now to answer the question, how much life insurance you need? Well, there's just really a standard rule of thumb that states you should have 10 to 12 times your annual income, and that's net of taxes. So the idea here is your beneficiary would use that proceed from the life insurance policy in order to help, pursue those goals of maintaining their lifestyle. You can't always go by rule of thumbs because you may need more or less depending on, say, if you would like maybe your mortgage to be paid off, or if you want to fund college for the kids. Now, there are many online life insurance calculators that can try to help you, assist you, and make it simple. I'm going to look at one supplied by Bankrate.com. All right, so here we are in the life insurance calculator, and let's use this as an example. Let's say we're looking at a 35-year-old person who is married and has 2 children, and this person plans on retiring at 65. So the first thing we need to input are burial expenses. Now that's going to range, but according to smartasset.com, the average funeral expense is $8,000. So we'll plug that in. Of course, that can be a lot more than that or a little less, but let's look at next, how many years of income will you need to cover? So this is the tricky part because no one knows when they're going to pass away, but remember I said you need to carry this through retirement, and that's, in this example, 30 years from now, so we need 30 years of income to replace. Obviously, if you passed away towards the end of the term, you wouldn't need as much insurance, but that's the thing, you just don't know. Next is net annual income. Let's assume $60,000 in this example. And how much have you saved up so far? Let's say, $100,000 saved up. And remember, do you have any children? Remember we said in this example, 2 children. Ages of the child, you'll plug that in. That looks good. We'll leave it at that, 3 and 5 years old. And do we want to fund future college expenses? So if you were to die prematurely, you got to think of the kids and their college accounts. And you could leave this blank. If you leave it blank, you'll need less life insurance coverage. But if you want to fund college expenses, let's say $100,000 for each child, and then we calculate that and look what we come up with. Based on that recommendation, all those inputs, $1,196,389. Oh, let's just round it up and say this individual needs $1.2 million of life insurance based on that criteria. Obviously, if you mess around with the inputs, the output's going to be different. So you see, everything's different. As you can see, there are factors involved here, including, your age, your income. Do you want to fund college costs? Or perhaps you have the goal of making sure the mortgage is paid off at your death. All right, so a common question I get is, does the non-working spouse need to have life insurance? Let's say there's a stay-at-home mom or dad, for example. In my opinion, they do need life insurance. Even though there's no loss of income, you need to think about such things as child care or maybe employing a nanny, which comes at a cost. So in this situation, I would take a look at average child care in your area per year, multiply that by the number of years you feel you would no longer need child care. So it may be a shorter term of insurance that will be needed. But what about retirement? If the surviving spouse is not going to be, losing any income, then probably there's no need for life insurance. But even if there's not going to be any significant financial loss if your spouse dies, you may still want to leave some money to charity or children or grandchildren, or maybe balance things out if it's a second marriage and you want to make sure your children from the previous marriage receive an inheritance. So in these situations, it really comes down to a personal preference of how much you want to leave to those children, grandchildren, or charities, and how much you can afford. Now, I mentioned earlier I like term insurance for a lot of various reasons, which we're not going to get into right now, but in this example, you may want to consider permanent insurance. So these are just really a couple of examples of how much life insurance you may need and how long you may need it for. I know it's not a fun subject. Nobody wants to think about it. But again, it's very important to your overall financial plan.